Welcome to Rethink Community Podcast, brought to you by Think Tank, Inc. I'm your host, John White. For the last 10 years, Think Tank has been helping people and organizations step into the stories of those who face poverty every day. We believe that stories have the power to break through our opinions and positions and bring us together. On this podcast, we bring you real stories from real people who have grappled with poverty, faced obstacles, blazed new trails, and forged unlikely relationships. What's the biggest misconception people have about recovery? In today's episode with Eric Mata, you'll learn about that and other things you might not know about addiction and recovery, like the consequences of being clean and the role that mentors can play in helping someone recover. I'd like to introduce Eric Mata with our podcast today and the Think Tank Inc. podcast, and it's a joy to be with you, Eric.
I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
And you've been working with Think Tank for a long time. Why don't you
define a long time?
Define a long time before we get into the details of your miraculous story.
Yeah, so my first involvement with Think Tank was back in 2010, back when I got clean. And my sponsor at the time, Carlos, got me connected with Think Tank. And it was one of them deals where I didn't know what the heck you guys were, what the heck you guys did. I just knew I believed in that one person, my sponsor, and I was just willing to do whatever he suggested to do. So he got me connected to you guys, and that's where it started.
And what were you doing back then to kind of attract you to or appeal to you?
So back then, quite honestly, it was when I first got connected with you guys, you said, well, we have this class that's coming up and we'll pay folks $200 to complete the class. And I'm like, oh man, I'm trying to buy a car. So like I could put that $200 with the rest of the money that I'm trying to save up and it would help me get a car. So it was the Getting Ahead class was what it was. But back then you guys had that stipend to where when folks completed it, you were able to, give me a $200 check for completing the class. So money was the motive for me.
And that Getting Ahead class, what attracted you about the Getting Ahead class?
Well, for me, starting out on a new journey in recovery, like I didn't know anything about life. So you guys were speaking a language that made sense because I knew that I didn't know how to budget. I didn't have good relationships in my life. I didn't have relationships with people outside of my normal circle. Even once I got into recovery, I still didn't have influences or mentors or people in my life outside of that recovery atmosphere, which is very possible to get isolated in that world alone as well. So it was not just education. It was not just budgeting skills. It was new people. It was new ideas. So that's what Getting Ahead offered me.
And what was so life-changing about that? Tell me a little bit about why you were in a situation where you needed that kind of social capital, that kind of community, that kind of the way of changing your worldview and on a day-by-day basis.
So back then I was 22 years old and I had been addicted to drugs from like literally 15 to 22. And everybody I knew used drugs. That was life, right?
15 to 22.
15 to 22. So when I got into recovery, I had reached this place where I was like, wow, it feels good to be clean and sober and like be able to get a job. But I quickly realized like I still didn't have anything going for me. I still had a record. I still had bad influences in my life. I still didn't have the right people. I didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do with my life because it was always so limited by my addiction. I didn't have any possibilities. So now that I'd got clean, I think when I first met you guys or first started interacting with Think Tank, I think I had like 5 or 6 months clean. So by that time I had a job, which I didn't like, right? I was working third shift at a mustard factory and I was riding my bicycle from one side of town all the way to the other, working third shift and then riding home. So of course I was grateful to have that job and be able to put some money in my pocket and pay my rent and stuff like that. But I quickly got to a place where I was working all night, sleeping all day, working all night, sleeping all day, and I wasn't happy. At 5 or 6 months clean, I'm like, man, this sucks. This is rough.
And you weren't happy yet. You had 6 months of of being clean.
Yeah.
There must have been some hope in your life.
Now, let me clarify. I was grateful, right?
Yes.
I was grateful to be in recovery, and I was grateful to see some hope for myself. But at the same time, like, I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy. I wasn't making any progress in my life. I got to the point where I was literally working all night and then sleeping all day. So I wasn't attending many 12-step meetings that I really enjoyed, that where my friends were and people that I liked, and my positive mentors and people that I looked up into recovery were. I literally had got to a place where I was like, man, this isn't working for me. And then my sponsor's like, hey, I want to connect you with this group. And I'm like, man, I work third shift. I don't know if I can do it. And he's like, I think back then it was like 5 to 7 or something like that. So it was perfect.
In your addiction, you probably had 7 years of it. You probably had community.
Oh, yeah, we got community.
You had community.
Yeah.
And that probably, it probably wasn't great community, but you did have a sense of community. And now here you're 6 months clean.
Yeah.
And you found yourself in isolation. And that probably was a big risk for you. And that's why you got into that program. And, and the program really, it's just not a program, but it was people that were fueling you into that program, right?
Absolutely. So, getting into treatment and meeting new people and like just being around somebody that said, I struggled with addiction for most of my life too, and I got clean and I've been in recovery, was like, wow, they understand me. They get it, and they understand where I've come from. Because see, the big misconception that people have about addiction and recovery is that once an addict gets clean, everything's going to be okay. Like, just get them off the drugs and, everything. There's plenty of work for people and there's housing everywhere. And that's not the case. Like, it is hard. Like, addiction has its own world of problems that have its own set of consequences that come with it. But getting clean has its own set of consequences that comes with it as well. And people don't realize, like, now all this wreckage of your past and all this bad debt and all these bad things that you've done are going to surface and be like, man, remember when you ripped me off 5 years ago? Or remember when you racked up this big bill on your grandma's credit card? Or remember when you stole this? And it's like, man, don't you know I'm clean? It's like people are not very excited that you've found this new way to live and are doing well. And, a lot of people are still upset. So it has its own set of struggles that comes with it.
You had to rebuild trust with people.
Yeah. I mean, it took a long time to do that. I mean, it was one of them deals where I had lied, cheated, and stole, manipulated, and burnt every single bridge I ever had. Every friend, every family, everybody.
Now, the people that are hearing this or viewing this, they're probably wondering, gosh, it's inspiring to see someone who has been 7 years an addict and 6 months. Why wouldn't 6 months clean? Why wouldn't we want to come alongside you and befriend you and also give you help with getting housing or a better job? Was that your case?
Well, here's the thing, and this was the game changer in my life early on when I started working with Think Tank. So I completed the class, right? I completed the Getting Ahead class. In the beginning, we set some goals. They said, Eric, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, man, I just want to get this $200 so I can get this car that my dad had a car he was willing to sell me for like $800 or something like that. Wouldn't give me no deal on it. Wouldn't let me. He wanted cash up front. And I was like, so I was trying to save up my money for that. So I was like, man, I want to get this car, And so after I completed Getting Ahead, we did like this evaluation. And I remember it was Ken Moss. He sat down with me and he said, Eric, what are your goals? And I'm like, man, nobody's ever really asked me that before. I didn't really know how to set goals or what goals were, or like coming from addiction, the goal was get high every day, and then like once I got into recovery, the goal was just don't use today, right? That was the only goal that I had, was just don't get high today. And that's the mindset that I lived in for 6, 7, 8, 9 months when I first got clean. But that's where I was. Like, that was the only goal I was capable of accomplishing, was just don't get high today. After several months in recovery, I had some more possibilities, right? So I remember I sat down with him. I said, I want to get my GED, right? I want to open a bank account. I want to get health insurance. I remember writing that out with him. And he said just like this. He said, well, Eric, if you want to get your GED, you call Clark State, you schedule your test, you pay for the test, and you take the test. 4 simple steps, which sounds easy.
4 big goals.
Well, to me, it sounds those goals sound very small today, right? But back then, like, I didn't understand what is Clark State? What is a community college? Like, where is this? And you know what's even crazier is I lived literally right around the block from the community college, and I didn't even know it was there. I lived there for 6, 7, 8 months. Didn't even know it was there.
Because your world was like this.
I did, yeah. I rode the bicycle from work to back home to meetings, and that was life, you know?
So tell me, it sounds like that was a start of an incremental process of victory after victory after victory.
Yep.
What were the key elements to that?
So it was this. It was me realizing what I wanted to accomplish. What was the thing, right? And back then it was get my GED. And then having somebody who knew how to accomplish that thing break down the step-by-step process for me. So for the GED, it was call, schedule, pay, take the test, right? And then for bank account, it was like, he said, okay, take your paycheck and your ID to the bank and tell them you want to open a bank account. And I'm like, that's it? That's all you have to do? And it was just like, and I took my bank account down. I took my my ID and my paycheck down there, and I opened up a bank account, and I put $5 in it, and they gave me a debit card. I'm like, oh my God, I got my own debit card. This is crazy. But back then, when I wanted to get health insurance in 2010, it just wasn't in the cards for a single male living in poverty to get health insurance like we can today, right? So I wasn't able to get health insurance back then. But what happened in that process is I was able to realize, like, if I want this thing and I know what it takes to get it, I'll do the work. Like, that's one thing about addiction. Like, whatever it takes to get high, I'm going to get high. There's nothing in the world that's going to stop me.
You're very resourceful.
Very resourceful. I'm telling you what, for anybody who's ever lived that life, you know what I'm talking about. When we want to get one, we are going to get one.
But isn't that an asset? That but wasn't that an asset?
It is, but
tenacity?
So many people think that it's a bad thing. And this is just my belief system. Like, I am, what is today? 3 days ago, I celebrated 10 years clean, right? So, and this whole entire time, like, I'm still an addict. I still have obsessive thoughts and obsessive behaviors to where if I get fixated on something, like, I am completely locked and loaded, and I will not stop until I do the thing that I'm trying to do. Almost to a fault sometimes, because it's extreme to some degree. But here's the thing. When I've learned how to channel that energy and that passion and that obsession into something that's going to better my life, better my community, make the world a better place, like, that's when miracles really started to happen for me. So it shifted from get my GED, and I got my GED. And I was like, okay, let me get my license. I got my license. I got the car. I got a better job. I worked at that job for a year. And I'm like, man, I want more. Like, I want to do more with my life. And, you know, every person in recovery goes through this thought process. You go through you're like, man, all these key players helped me so much. For me, it was my counselor, right? I had a good counselor who was just there for me. I had a good sponsor. I had some good mentors. So I was like, I want to become a counselor, you know, because at this time, a year and a half clean, my entire family's still addicted to drugs. All my old friends are still addicted to drugs. And I've found this new life, and I'm like, I'm working, I'm going to Kings Island and stuff I've never done before. And I'm just so excited. I'm like, all my family's still struggling with addiction. I thought, what can I do to help these people try to get clean? So the best thing I could come up with is I want to become a counselor, right? So I was like, so I went to my counselor. I said, what do I got to do to become a counselor? I knew my goal. I knew who had accomplished it. I knew who could help me create a step-by-step process. And she said, Eric, well, if you're serious, go to Clark State, do the registration process, enroll in some social work classes, and go to college and become a counselor. So I remember, man, I was like, so I got clean at 22. I took my first college class. I had just about 2 years clean, so I was 24. And I walked in there I went and I took the pre-test and and I like tested into like the really low beginner level classes. Like, I was like, my first class was like 1 + 1 is 2. And I'm like, man, I can get with this. And it was just like, it was just baby step after baby step after baby step. But I did the work. You know, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew the plan. I knew what I had to do to accomplish it. So I enrolled in college, and I was working 2 jobs, and I was going to school, and I was staying clean. I was just doing everything I could to continue to try to move forward in my life. And in that belief and that thought process came from that man sitting down with me that was with Think Tank and said, what is your goals? What are the steps you're going to have to do to get there? And are you willing to put in the work?
People that were believing in you, believing in the potential, seeing the leadership from within you probably didn't feel like a leader very much in those times of addiction. But
Right.
so tell me about your story now. Okay, so this you have progressed, and that has built upon, that foundation has been built upon brick after brick.
Yep.
Tell me what you're doing today.
So, you know, just to kind of fast forward, make the last 10 years as quick as possible. So I enrolled in college. I got my associate's degree. I became a counselor. I got my chemical dependency license. I enrolled into a university, and I got my bachelor's degree in social work. I'm a licensed social worker. I got the next level higher chemical dependency counselor license. I
Started a family.
started a family. They teach you in social work school. They said, well, when you guys graduate and get out here and start working, they're like, you'll be lucky to make $12 an hour. And I'm like, what? I've been making like $9 forever, and it's like $12 an hour is not much of a difference. I'm like, how am I going to live? So I've forever been working 2 or 3 jobs just to like, I don't want to be that guy who just stays above water, right? Who just is like, oh gosh, please let me have enough money for my rent, or please let me have enough money for food. Like, I don't want to be that guy. So in my experience, like, I don't have a very high paying job. So I had to work multiple jobs to be able to create the steady income that I wanted to do the things that I wanted to do. So my last job at the treatment center that I worked at, which was cool. Like, I started as a residential tech, then I moved up to case manager, then I was counselor, then I was the vocational counselor where I was helping clients get jobs, which was fun. So I would quite regularly apply for different jobs, right? And I would go on interviews, and I would go on these interviews, and I would go in there, and while they're interviewing me, I would tell them, like, I want $25 an hour. And they'd look at me like I was crazy. Like, why? What do you, $25 an hour? It's like, and some of them probably weren't even making $25 an hour. But what happened is each time I said, I want $20 an hour, I want $25 an hour, I would get about 30 seconds to describe why I felt I was worth $20 an hour. And the better I got at that, the closer I got at accomplishing that goal. And eventually I got so good at it that somebody offered me $20 an hour. So I left that job. I started a new job, and it was just like little baby step after baby step after baby step, So I just actually quit that job 2 weeks ago. So over the last 2 years, I started a weekend driver intervention program for OVI offenders, for people who are charged with OVI. The law says that any first-time OVI offender has to do a mandatory 3 days in jail or attend a driver's intervention program. And the cool thing about the requirements per the state of Ohio for that is all you need is a bachelor's degree and a licensed social worker license to start that program. They don't care that I have a felony on my record. Well, let me rephrase that. They know I have a felony on my record, but it's 10 years old. So it's not like they're holding it against. It's not like it happened last week. Right. It's been a long time. I've been able to prove that I've changed my life, but for the longest time I thought I'll never be able to get a good job. I got a felony on my record. Like, nobody wants to hire me. It was just struggle after struggle after struggle. But I was able to start that business and build that business. And now we run like 6 or 7 different locations. We've served almost 2,000 people. I mean, we've made money, we've helped people, and it's really like a dream come true. So, as for the last 2 years, I've been juggling this full-time job and another part-time job, and, doing copes with Think Tank whenever I can, and building this business. And so I have a social work education, right? I like to help people. I like to use resources that are available to help people. Entering this business world has been a complete self-taught education that I've had to, I've bought hundreds of books, tons of courses, spent so much time with resources in the community, like the Small Business Development Center that helps businesses get up and running and grow their business. So I've used the same tools that helped me get my GED, to graduate, to get a second degree, to start a family, to buy a home, to, grow professionally, to start a business, to start another business. There's really no secret other than knowing what you want and knowing who can help you accomplish those goals the fastest. That's it. And
in closing, it's a great story. It's and it's not there's many more chapters left.
Oh yeah, just getting started.
But you're at the same time you're looking back and helping build social capital, extend your social capital with others that are following you. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I've been a part of building programs that are currently still running in jails and prisons. Like I've built a program. I wrote it and copyrighted the book and helped create a video course that helps inmates who are returning back into the community. Right. I mean, it runs every day in the Clark County Jail. It runs every day in the Monday program. And I'm not sure if there's more places than that, but at least those two. But
how important is that to look back and to give back in a way that still fuels your fire?
I don't look at it as important. I look at it as the right thing. Right. And that's just how, it's like, yeah, part of me is like, oh, Eric, you've done such a wonderful job helping all these people. But it's like, who cares? You're doing what you're supposed to do. And that's what matters. Like I have been blessed to have visions and blessed to be able to have these creative mindsets. So it's my duty to try to execute on these different ideas that I have and try to help these people in different creative ways. So what I'm faced with today is like, yeah, I like to help people, but for some reason I have this crazy goal. Like I want to help 1 million people. I want to help 1 million people who struggled just like I did. Right. So working one-to-one, it will never add up to 1 million. Right. So I'm trying to figure out different ways to use technology and different ways to use different platforms to reach the masses, right? To reach the mass people who struggle with addiction, or the mass people who, 4,000 people walk out of our county jail every single year. 4,000 people. And once that person leaves that door, they don't know where they go. They don't know they don't know if they're going to a home. They don't know if they have a job. They don't know if their kids are going to be provided for. They don't know where they're going to eat. They just leave and say, see ya. That's it. There's no processes that are in place to help these people who, there's some processes, but there's not a process that captures everybody that leaves the jail. If you meet certain criteria, certain requirements, you can fall under some certain different types of programs, but it's not for everybody. The jail program, it plays for everybody. It's a way to help anybody that comes to the jail. And yeah, if there's 100 people in there, 85 of them are gonna be like, screw this stuff. We don't like this. We're criminals anyway. So they think they're gangsters and thugs and all that stuff. But I'm telling you what, I've had people message me. I've had people write me letters. I've had people message me on Facebook and just say, man, thank you. I took the class and it was awesome. I'm out here. I got a job. And I just hit them with the thumbs up. I'm like, that's good stuff.
If someone was listening to this broadcast that is stuck in addiction, what's the one thing you want to tell them?
Ask for help, right? You have to seek treatment. You cannot do it on your own. Here's the thing. Let me rephrase that. Some people can do it on their own. Some people can stop, right? But that's not the way that's going to be able to add the most value to the world, right? So there are tons of resources in every community that help people struggling with addiction to get into treatment, to get medication-assisted treatment, to find housing, to find a job. So it's like so many people focus on how they can accomplish the thing they want to do. Get clean, get a job. How can I do this? How can I do that? But the real question is, who can help me do it the fastest? Right? Who can help me get into treatment? Who can help me write a resume? Who can help me get a job? Who can help me go to college? Because here's the thing. If you try to do everything on your own, it might take you a year or 2 or 5 years to accomplish something that somebody could teach you how to do in 5 days. Yep. You know what I'm saying? And like, I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to be the pioneer who's out here trying to blaze the new trail. Like the trails have already been blazed. Find somebody who has done what you're trying to do and do the exact same thing they did, and you'll get the same results, or pretty daggone close.
Thank you, Eric Mata, for this. Tell me what your business is called today.
So Substance Abuse Prevention Institute, we are Ohio's newest and highest rated driver's intervention program. We serve every court from Lima all the way down to Cincinnati.
How can we get a hold of you?
www.sapiovi.com.
Eric Mata.
Yes, sir.
You're a hero.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
This has been the Rethink Community Podcast, brought to you by Think Tank, Inc., with music by Elijah Hamilton. Don't forget to subscribe to hear upcoming episodes featuring the stories of other courageous individuals we think you should know. And if you are part of an organization that would like to be better equipped to serve people in poverty, be sure to check out the resources we offer, including the Cost of Poverty Experience, or COPE, at thinktank-inc.org/COPE. Join the hundreds of businesses, schools, colleges, churches, and healthcare providers that have used the cost of poverty experience, along with our other suite of tools and coaching to find new ways of thinking and responding to poverty.